And now, welcome to Chai with Manju, with your host, Dr. Manju Sheth.
Hello and welcome to Chai with Manju. Our guest today is the president and CEO of YW Boston, which was previously known as YWCA. It was in 1866 that this wonderful organization was established right here in our great city of Boston with the mission to eliminate racism, empower women, and promote peace, justice, and dignity for all. Let's meet the very charismatic CEO of this organization, Beth Chandler. Welcome, Beth Chandler, to our show. It's truly such an honor to have you with us today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me, Manju.
So, Beth, you grew up in Branford, a small New England town of Connecticut, where you said you had a very loving family, as well as Sundays were spent at church, where your grandmother was also a founder. Yet you said your childhood was not free of hurtful experiences, as there were very few families of color in your town. So tell us what your childhood was like, and what are some of the experiences you had that shaped you to be the person that you are today?
Sure, it's a great question. And, I have talked often about my childhood town, Branford, where I grew up. And in many ways, it was a wonderful place to grow up. And when people come to visit, they will often say it reminds them of the town in the show Leave It to Beaver from the 50s. And it was very quaint in that way. But there were also experiences as one of the few kids of color in my town that were very hard and hurtful. And it would be that I was called the N-word a lot growing up. And it was rare that outside of my family that anybody responded in a way that felt comforting to me. Often the responses were either they ignored that it happened or said that the other child didn't mean it or didn't know what they were saying. And that may have been true, but it didn't negate the fact that it was said and that it was hurtful and that I didn't know what to do or what to say because it's made me, feel so alone. So that was, one example. Another example is my town had many, what do you call those? Clubs, country clubs. And I didn't know what a country club was for the longest time. And then eventually I found out what they were, but there was no family of color that was ever invited to belong to a country club. And why it mattered was because many of my peers that went to country clubs or belonged to country clubs often had access to people that I didn't. And so they were able to get jobs that were some of the better paying jobs for, teenagers in town. And they got those because of word of mouth, because of people that they knew. And I was, not afforded those opportunities. So those are just a couple of examples of how even in ways my childhood experience was wonderful. There were also ways that it was really hard. And I think that also led to eventually me working for an organization like YW Boston, because I didn't have the language back then to understand or talk about what was going on, and to not think that it was about me personally, but more about this structure in our society that we live in. And so as I got older, I became more aware that this wasn't about me as Beth, but it had more to do with me being a person of color, with me being a woman, that there were other factors. And so I think because I had, when I started working, I had, I was as equally qualified as any of my peers going to the schools that I had gone to, getting the education that I had, but still noticing I wasn't having necessarily the same opportunities. And so I think that, eventually led me to want to be at a place like YW Boston, where we were really trying to get at the root causes of inequities that exist in this society, and to avoid people having experiences, that I had. And ideally, young people in school to go through our FIRE program would be more aware of what's going on. Those schools would be more aware of the systems so that they can make concerted efforts so that people really feel like they belong. And the same for organizations we work with.
Absolutely. Now, you're a professional athlete. You played basketball in college and then professionally in Europe. Now, athletes are known to be very visionary leaders and true team players. What do you think basketball taught you to be the great leader that you are today?
Oh, well, thank you for the compliment saying that I'm a great leader. I think there are so many lessons. We could probably spend the entire interview talking about the many things I learned through playing basketball. But some of the things that really stand out to me, one is that things aren't over until they are really over. And so there were countless games where we may have been behind at a certain and the other team would have thought they were going to win the game, yet by the end of the game my team had won, and vice versa. So always understanding that there are ebbs and flows, and that you really, there's always an opportunity for things to turn out the way you want them to. So there's no more time on the clock. So that's one thing that I learned. Another thing that I learned was being able to, I think, work with different people and different personalities, because ultimately, if there was a shared vision and a shared goal, that's what really mattered, and that you needed different people with different skill sets to get there. So we all couldn't play the same position or have the same strengths on the court, because it wouldn't have allowed us to thrive as a team. And so I think I have learned to appreciate people's differences and different skill sets that people bring to the table, as long as we have a shared vision. And I think that's why one of the things that's been important to me in my position is that every quarter we talk about where we are as an organization, and that helps to remind us of where we are, where we're going, and how we want to get there. And I think that's important to keep coming back to what is our shared vision, what is our shared purpose. And then I think the thing that I learned from playing basketball is that it is a way to bring people together. And so growing up in the town that I grew up in, my town was very supportive of the girls basketball team. And that wasn't common in lots of places where we played, but we had many people. And I even get phone calls still today from some of the folks that came, back when I was playing in high school, just to check in and say they may have seen something about me or were thinking about basketball because of the Yukon Huskies, since I grew up in Connecticut. And, it was something that really drew people together. And so I think, that's another thing that resonates for me in my work with YW Boston, is that we really think about how do we bring people together? How do we call people in, as opposed to how do we, call people out? So those are just some of the lessons that I've learned and how they apply today for me.
One of the interesting stories on a different note that when I was reading about you was this great story that you said that basketball also taught you to prepare well. That when you have a presentation or you have something important to do, you prepare so well, and in your head you can visualize it as you did when you were playing the game, right?
Yes.
That was so wonderful to read as well.
Yeah, it's true. I do think that preparation matters.
Right.
You can't control everything. Can control your effort. Right. And you can control how you prepare yourself. And so I guess there's a little bit of a control freak in me, because I like to be able to control what I can and know what I can control. And that way it limits what the unexpected possibilities might be. Right.
Right. What do you think is your biggest strength, though?
My biggest strength. I think one thing that is a strength of mine is I'm pretty calm. And so it takes a lot to get me rattled. And I think that is helpful, particularly when we may be dealing with a stressful situation, that I'm generally not going to get rattled. I think, every strength is also a weakness. So I think the downside of that is that I'm not particularly emotive. And so if people need somebody that's like a cheerleader and a rah-rah, it's not me, right? And sometimes it can be helpful. I think when we are in stressful situations or have difficult decisions, that people can, because I'm calm in those situations, it helps other people to be able to settle as well.
Right. It's hard to be the grace under fire, though. So you have to tell us, what is your secret of staying calm? Because I'm constantly working on it. Don't always achieve it. I'm
Is
calm
it-
even I'm seeing patients, but apart from that, I'm not that calm.
right. I think part of it is probably just how you're wired as a human being.
Okay.
I'm
Okay.
just wired that way.
Uh-huh.
I think the other thing is that I do believe that what will be, and
Uh-huh.
that there's, all I can do is control what I can do, but I can't
Right.
control what other people will do.
Right.
I can't control
Uh-huh.
things outside of that. And so I feel fairly comfortable most times that I've prepared
Mhm.
the best that I could. And
Okay.
so outside of that, I can't do anything more.
Mhm.
And I also don't worry about what other people think.
Okay.
Because, I learned a long time ago that there will always be people that can say negative things about me, that
Right.
are going to like me. And that's okay. Like, everybody's not going
Mhm.
to be, and that's not my job.
Right.
I need to not beat myself up, because there are
Mhm.
lots of people that are willing to do it for me. So, that's also how I look at things. It's like, it's my job to support myself,
Mhm.
and do what I can to, build myself up, because there are always going to be people who are going to do the opposite.
I think that's the best advice you can give it to anybody. So let's talk a little bit about YW Boston. Now, we live in times, of course, where now racism is being called literally a public health hazard.
Mhm.
And YWCA was founded to eliminate racism, empower women, peace, justice, dignity for all. What are some of the programs that you have that our viewers could join and learn about and get educated? So just share some of the key programs that you have at YW Boston with us.
Well, one of the things that we offer are our diversity, equity, and inclusion services. And those we do across all sectors. So we
Uh-huh.
work with any organization. And I think, the beauty of those programs is that they're all designed to meet people where they are in organization,
Okay. Okay.
and to help people understand what are,
Right.
not only the history of policies and practices, but what are ways
Mhm.
that we can identify what might be happening within our own organization,
Right.
and be able to
Right.
change, right? Because
Mhm.
I think often people say, well, I'm not a racist, so I
Mhm.
can't be doing anything. And people don't
Right.
realize that, it's a system that we all
Right.
live in and that we are a part of. And we really have to be intentional if we
Right.
want different outcomes. And so, our diversity, equity, inclusion services really help people, I think, better understand the system, better
Right.
understand how they may be contributing to that, how their organization may be contributing to that, and then give
Mhm.
them strategies to really both change individual behavior
Mhm.
and to help change how things are happening within their organizations. We also do something every April called Stand Against Racism, where people can sign up either within their organizations or as individuals to make a pledge to stand up against racism. And then we have content that we get from guest curators. So this past year, for example, we had the McCourty brothers from the Patriots football team, who provided content that people could watch, and then had discussion questions as well. And so we get content from a variety of different
Mhm.
curators. And it might be a book, an article, a video that people
Mhm.
recommend. They'll say a little bit of why, and then they'll have discussion questions so that people can have a discussion within their organization, within their religious community, within their families, to really
Mhm.
understand a little more of what a particular issue is. And so those are a couple of ways that people can get involved. And the last I'll share is that we have an advocacy committee that looks at what are policies at either the local level or the state level that might be impeding people's ability to really be included in society, in their organization. An example is Massachusetts has over 800, I think, boards and commissions, which means there's like over 4,000 seats on these boards and commissions. These boards and commissions make decisions on behalf of the Commonwealth, yet they don't represent demographically the people of the Commonwealth. And so we are pushing forward legislation called the Parity on Board legislation that would require that every Mass Board and Commission have no more than 50% plus one of any gender, that at a minimum, the racial and ethnic composition mirror that of the state, and that a concerted effort be made to place women of color on boards and commissions, because efforts
Wonderful.
focused on men have generally benefited white women. Efforts that have
Right.
focused on people of color have generally benefited men of color, so women of color have gotten left out. So those are some ways that people can get involved.
Sure. Now, when you look back at the years as a CEO of this wonderful organization, what do you think has been your biggest achievement so far?
I think the biggest achievement so far was the completion about, now it's been about 4 years ago, of our strategic plan. So when I first became CEO, interim CEO, and charged with putting together a strategic plan for the organization. And we needed to really think about what was the impact that we wanted to have in the city, and how did we want to be known? Lots of people had heard of YWCA, but they could not tell you what it was that we did or who we were. And so now I think, having gone through that process, having really centered our programming around our vision of helping organizations make more inclusive environments, I think that's how we are now identified. I think people can say, here's the work that YW Boston does. Here's the impact they want to have in the city. So that's something I'm very proud of. I'd say a second thing is that we are, forecasting this year a balanced budget. And so that will be the first time in, almost my history here with the organization, that we are going to be able to do that. And that doesn't mean, that we don't need to continue to fundraise, but it means that we are finally, finding that balance between the revenue that we're bringing in and the expense to support the work that we're doing.
Music to our ears, the budget looks good.
Yes.
So I asked you so many serious questions, but I have to ask you, what does Beth do for fun?
What do I do for fun? There are a few things. So I've been part of a book group and a work group, 2 different groups for over a decade for both of those. And so those are things that I enjoy doing. I like to exercise, so I still get to the gym. I go to the gym about 3 to 4 times a week. I have 2 dogs as well as 2 kids. So being able to walk the dogs, and often I will, ask a friend or 2 to join. And so being able to, have time with close friends and family and just talk and, be able to relax are things that I enjoy. And I have to say ice cream. I'm a huge ice cream fan. So
which one is your favorite? I have
as long as it's ice cream, it's my favorite. And my partner and I will often look online to see if there's been a new ice cream shop that opened up that we haven't tried, and we'll head out, and that'll be a weekend venture to try to explore some new ice creams. Do you have a favorite ice cream?
Chocolate, and more chocolate.
Anything chocolate, I can understand that. You and my daughter would get along just fine.
And one day we have to let you try some Indian food. You'll be pleasantly surprised.
I'd be happy
and then
to.
Ice cream will taste better with that because it's spicy.
Yes, I remember the first time I had Indian food was when I was in college.
Okay.
I'd never, growing up in Brantford, I was not aware of any Indian restaurants. I don't know any. So my first experience was in college, and my friends that I had gone with all had Indian food previously. So they ordered everything as hot and spicy as you can imagine. I think I was able to have about 3 bites before it was done. And I spent the rest of the time drinking lots of water.
Did you ever have the courage to try it again?
Oh yeah, I love Indian food.
Okay. So, good. So you have to do that. Okay. Now, what is next for you? What's the next big dream?
My next big dream is retirement.
You're too young for that. So.
Unfortunately, as I say, it's a ways off. But, I really enjoy what I'm doing. I feel that, I have one of the best jobs that anyone could ask for. I feel like I continue to grow and to learn, and that's really what's important to me. I like to be able to learn new things, to try new things. I think that's something I got from my father, and that was in part how I ended up playing basketball professionally. I had actually graduated from college. I had a moving van in our driveway. I was getting ready to move that weekend to Washington, D.C. To start a job at a public policy research institute. And I got a phone call from my college basketball coach who said that there was an opportunity to play basketball overseas in Austria. And my father happened to be home, and he said, "Oh, who was that?" And I told him, and he said, "Oh, so you're going?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm going to see. We've got the moving van. I'm supposed to start." He said, "You can work for the rest of your life. When are you ever going to have a chance to live abroad and play basketball?" Right. So had he not been there, I would not have had that opportunity. But he was always about, trying new and different things, because that's how you learn. So I think that has certainly been, a lesson I have learned from him. And so that's what I'm trying to do is, learn new and different things, both about myself and about the world. So I feel like I have an opportunity to do that in role at YW Boston with the organizations and partners we get to work with, and through staff. And I certainly learn a ton from our staff, particularly given the work that we do and the experiences that people bring. So, I am just happy to continue to learn and one day to retire and go on one of those barges down the Seine and stop at all the wineries cruise along the way. Yeah, but I just want to stop at all the wineries. Yes.
So, thank you so much for coming.
You're welcome, Manju. You're welcome.
Thank you.